Hi, I'm Marlon Sorto. I'm here with the Vice President of STAR, Erica Henderson, Ayana Holder, the Public Relations Officer, Cameron Skies, the Treasurer, Laura DeMarzo, the Executive Editor of the Catalyst newspaper, and Jalen Nataro, Student Community Advocate. We created this panel in order to discuss sexual harassment and sexual abuse. In particular, to STAR, Erica, would you like to comment on what STAR is, which stands for Students Together Against Rape?
So STAR is a student-run organization. We're partnered with the One Love Foundation, and the One Love Foundation was founded by Cindy Love. Her daughter was a victim of domestic violence, and so they're partnered also with other campuses trying to bring awareness on domestic violence.
And then can you discuss a little bit about what your role is as Vice President of STAR?
So basically what I do is help running the meetings and making sure we have everything that we need for our programs, for any tablings that we do, and whenever we run events.
So essentially we created this panel because Laura DeMarzo has been very heavy on writing articles about sexual harassment and sexual rape. In our last November edition, she actually wrote about her personal experience on sexual assault. Would you be willing to discuss a little bit about your piece?
Absolutely. My piece was my personal experience, and I wanted to speak about the sort of gray area. A lot of the time we don't talk about rape within relationships and rape within date rape and things like that. There's a lot of gray area and a lot of, especially on campus. Betsy DeVos is making it harder for students and women and men both to face their accuser on campus, so we definitely wanted to write about that.
And Jalen Nataro, our student community advocate, he's done a bunch of multimedia pieces in regards to this issue. Jalen, would you mind telling us a little bit about your previous work, especially on campus?
Yes, definitely. So I worked on a multimedia piece in which I discussed about the precautions SUNY Old Westbury takes to prevent these sexual assaults on campus. In this multimedia project, they had a different tactics. They have safety aids that help prevent safety aids that help prevent sexual assault on campus. They also have the organization STAR, who does programs and just runs organizations to just help prevent, and we just want to advocate. Not a lot of people are aware of this situations, and we just want to, like I said before, advocate these situations.
So I think the way we should start with this conversation is the topic of consent. I guess I'll bring this up to Erica as Vice President. What is the true definition of consent? Is it verbal? Is it physical? Is it both? Just so whoever is watching this has a better understanding of what consent means.
So generally it's going to be a verbal yes, but sometimes it can be physical. Paying attention to your partner's body, if they're nodding, if they're being in agreement, and if they stop, let's say if you're having a sexual act and if they stop moaning, or if their body becomes rigid, they're no longer liking what you're doing and you should stop.
Ariana, I'm just curious if you could piggyback on something that she said. What would happen if someone changes their mind, but you're not completely sure if you should proceed, if you shouldn't proceed? Is that something that you feel comfortable in adding on?
If that initial feeling of not being sure of anything, it's not consent. You need to, it's very, very sure. It's not in the middle. It's not kind of, she said this or he said this, so I'm going to take that as a yes. It has to be very specifically, yes, continue, or no, stop. There's no room, there's no gray area, black and white for this.
Great.
Yeah.
So the Me Too movement, it's been around for a while now, but I think in the last 2 to 3 years, we've really seen the growth of it, the involvement of women in the Me Too movement. I'm just curious about the men in the panel. I feel like in society, we really need to collaborate with all genders, all communities and society. So do you think collaborating with men is essential? Do you think that your voices would help our movement in terms of women?
Well, I definitely think it would help because a lot of people come with the assumptions that men cannot get raped, which is completely false because men also can be sexually assaulted. So I believe them collaborating will make a bigger aspect of what sexual assault is. It's not only women that can be sexually assaulted. Everybody can be sexually assaulted, and we just want to help prevent those causes. So if we both join together and make something greater of it, there will be a long-lasting effect, and we can all prevent sexual assault together.
Cameron, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts, I agree with him completely. I feel that a lot of people don't pay attention to the fact that men can be assaulted, men can be raped, but also adding on to that, a lot of the discussion of what is consent, of what is assault, starts with both partners understanding what their limits are, what they'll stand for, what they'll allow, and what they won't. I feel like having both parties, in the traditional sense, having the man and the woman discuss, what their limits are, what they're into, what they're not, that, starts a better conversation about what their consent is. Going off of what Ariana said or what Erica said, the idea of consent is that you have a clear, concise yes. There's never going to be a gray area where you won't know if the other person's into it or if the other person wants this to continue, and that all comes with, knowing your partner, knowing what you want to do with your partner, knowing what your partner wants to do with you. And if you have a method of consent that goes outside of a yes, maybe it's a certain type of nod or like a keyword, then that all comes from communication, because communication is key. You always want to understand your partner. You always want to understand, where you want to take this and what the next step is.
So Cameron, you bring up a great point about communicating in terms of consent, but oftentimes communication can be hazy in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
What is done when, let's say, intoxication is involved and both parties are essentially under the influence? How can we establish some sort of consent there?
Well, that is a difficult question to answer, because when both parties are intoxicated, their judgment is disoriented, their motor function disoriented, and they're basically more susceptible to act off of instincts and act off of emotions and hormones.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to both parties being intoxicated, it all comes to prior to that. Now let's say this is a couple. Say this is a couple that they went out or they're at home or whatever, and they came together. They got some drinks and they're intoxicated now. If they've had conversation before this about this situation, then they'll know what to do once it comes down. If they don't, then that's where the tricky part of it is, because you won't really know what will be done. The only real thing you can control in that situation is yourself. If you're one individual in that situation, then the only thing you can really control is your actions and how well you can control yourself. So that comes down to a sense of your morals and what you believe is right. If you believe that you shouldn't be doing anything sexual because you're not in the right mindset right now, then you shouldn't. There's no yes or no about it. If you feel, in your heart that what you're going to do is wrong, or you feel wrong about it, then don't do it. And the same thing could be said about the other person.
I just want to piggyback on
Sure,
that.
go ahead.
The general standard for, just to piggyback on what Karen said, is consistent checking in with your partner, right? So, because you might have started off the night that you're going to have sex or you're not going to have sex, right? And you drink, inhibitions become a little loose, or you just change your mind because you're human. You just check in with your partner constantly. A standard is to check how much they've drank since you've last checked in with them. So, and if they're able to consent or not, just being conscious, but also just checking in and making sure all those cues that they're still enjoying themselves, they're still okay with each touch you're giving them, whether it be verbal cues or just the physical reactions. That's pretty much a way to shift the conversation. I'm intoxicated, so I don't know if you're saying yes, but you're also intoxicated. Just constant check-ins is the standard, basically.
Now, Laura, you've in the past described yourself as an open book in this topic. From your experience or also from your expertise, is there a specific environment where sexual harassment and sexual abuse are at a higher rate? Or no? It's
just the patriarchy of society. Okay. So definitely agreeing with what everyone said on the panel. Shifting the blame from the accused, whether it's a man or a woman, and the accuser, putting that blame less on the woman, technically, that we're taught to not dress a certain way, not go out certain times of night, and start teaching our men or even our women to not be rapists, for lack of a better word, right? That they're not entitled to bodies and they're not entitled to sex. So really we've seen with the Me Too movement from the top, to judiciary branches, all the way down to just regular everyday citizens. So there's no, I don't think there's any increase based on society. I think it's just the patriarchy of what we're taught.
Now, in terms of sexual harassment and sexual abuse, STAR, you guys have a very huge presence on our campus. And it's without a doubt that, unfortunately, a lot of these cases do happen in the dorms for residents. For campus students, especially here in Old Westbury, what are some resources that they have available if they don't feel comfortable going to a friend and they actually need substantial help?
Well,
Sure. Oh, go ahead.
so like let's say like if it happens in the dorm, if you feel comfortable speaking to your RA or to your RD, you can go to them because they are trained to help you handle the situation. You can call UP, or there's also the psychological counseling center, there's the health center, and also there's ways to report anonymously online if you would like to do that.
There are other things that we try to get people to understand is that our members, especially our e-board, we get trained also into learning how to deal with certain situations and like some of the mechanisms people use to heal after becoming a victim. We also we give out information, like we give out the number to like the Safe Center, Long Island Safe Center, and we post things on like our Instagrams and our other social pages with information to like the RAIN network, which is Rape, Incest, and
National Network.
Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. That's what that is. And so there are all these resources that people can go to. A lot of them do anonymous work because a lot of times people are iffy about coming forward.
Okay. Laura, I'm just curious, as a society, I think we've come a long way, because I know, like, during the Anita Hill trials, the topic of sexual harassment was kind of like, oh, they were essentially blaming the victim. But now we obviously come a long way. How as a society can we continue to grow in terms of this problem?
I mean, I guess you can make the argument whether or not we came a long way, because you
Okay.
see that repeated with Dr. Blasey Ford. The parallels between Anita Hill and Blasey Ford are super apparent, where no one really took her seriously. She was educated. She was the same law degree. Blasey Ford is a doctor. And when it comes to a male narrative, you're kind of doubting the woman. They're questioning, and the narrative is boys will be boys, rather than maybe we should teach our boys not to do the things they're doing. So I think we've come a long way that we're hearing women out. Harvey Weinstein, is crumbling now, where he had a reign for decades. So I think just changing the conversation and educating our men on how to be leaders and doing the right thing for the future generations and women. And definitely agree with what Cameron said about sexual fluidity in conversations, being comfortable to say what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with, because women are kind of taught to be timid about sexuality and to act like they don't want it, and then that causes a gray area for men too. I've admitted in my articles where I've said no, where I meant try again in 5 minutes, and that's a dangerous game to play. So definitely that conversation.
If I can just add on to what Laura was saying, in terms of not being taken seriously, there's also the case of Terry Crews. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with. He was he was accusing somebody of sexually assaulting him on the job.
Yeah.
So yes, just like Laura said, there was a lot of humor towards that about how such a big, strong man can be sexually assaulted by somebody else. As said before, all these allegations are very serious and should be taken with a huge seriosity, because these allegations don't come off nothing. So Terry Crews was definitely affected because he thought nobody believed him. I said there's a stereotype that men will be men. Men are so masculine that they can handle situations. However, in some occasions, these situations play really into their mental standing, because they are thinking, oh, I just been sexually assaulted. However, some people just, tell them, just suck it up. You're lucky that this happened to you, which is definitely not what they should be told, because everybody deserves to be treated equally on that sexual assault standpoint.
I just want to piggyback based off this particular time period when you mentioned Blasey Ford. I don't know if many people know this, but towards the end of the trials, Trump made statements saying it's a very scary time to be a male. I'm just curious about the male in the panels. Is it essentially a scary time to be a male, or do you guys want to comment on that?
Personally, I feel like the reason he said that is because he feels that it's scary to be a male in the sense that we can be accused of anything. And that type of mindset is kind of detrimental, not even kind of, that kind of mindset is very detrimental to us growing as a nation, because if we think of it from the standpoint of, oh, we could be accused of anything, we should be thinking of it from the standpoint of, oh, we shouldn't be doing anything to be accused of in the first place. And to just blanket that with, oh, it's a scary time to be a male, it's just like you're covering up a vast amount of issues, a vast amount of problems that men have, with hypermasculinity and with, growing up being taught a certain thing, growing up being taught that it's okay to do certain things just because you're a man. If you cover that up, then the problem never gets fixed, and it actually worsens as time goes on, and then generations and generations later down the line, you're just going to have an exacerbated issue that should have been fixed a long time ago. But because of mindsets like this, it's going under the rug, essentially.
Okay.
And to piggyback on that, that narrative is so dangerous because we have a education secretary who's taking advice from the National Coalition of Men,
Okay.
who the president defended Ray Rice when he punched his wife, saying she shouldn't have been aggravating him and she wouldn't have got punched.
Okay.
So that narrative influenced the way Betsy DeVos wants to change Title IX,
Okay.
and that's affecting how rape victims are treated on campus. They now want to allow a cross-examination right away. It's insane when it's never done before, and it's not part of due process to have a cross-examination before the complaint even goes anywhere.
That's correct.
It's going to stop. The statistics are out that stops people from reporting, and it hurts victims in the long run. So,
Jalen, I noticed you wanted to say something.
Yes,
before.
definitely. Adding on to what Laura and Cameron said, I also feel like these things the president says comes from his experiences, because I'm not sure if you guys also heard of the Stormy Daniels case where he said he had nothing to do with Stormy Daniels. However, it was later found out that he and the people he worked with paid her, so she didn't say anything about these sexual allegations or anything. So basically, like Cameron said, trying to cover up. He was trying to cover up his tracks, which is not what somebody should do. So I just feel like sometimes he says stuff because he doesn't want to be kind of the poster child of it. So he also has said some some disgusting things about what women are and how women should be treated. And I just feel like that is not the example he should be setting as a president. Our systems are based on democracy, equality, and the way he speaks about women, immigrants, etc., are just ways that show that he doesn't think we are equal as human beings. And in a society, we all are equal, no matter your race, gender, skin tone, etc.
Okay, that's a great point. I'm just curious also, since you guys are considered our experts on the panel, I think there's been question on why victims take so long to come out with their stories. Sometimes they say it's fear, sometimes it's the fear of judgment. Can you guys just elaborate on what the reason truly may be for people that don't understand or don't know?
Well, okay, I'm just going to talk about my experience with the people that have come to me in my in their times of need, and this goes even beyond the time that I've been with STAR. A lot of them have come to the realization that they needed to talk to someone, so they decided to confide in me because I try to be out there and try to be available for my friends, my family, whoever I care about and who cares about me. And a lot of commonalities with it comes in the sense of they're afraid of mainly two things. One is the thought that they'll be judged by their peers, by their family, how parents will take it, and they think about that. They constantly run that over in their minds, and it just eats away at them. It just makes them feel like the second they tell somebody, they'll be demonized. And honestly, I'm going off this because a lot of these people were women. A lot of this stems from the idea that if you have sex, you're basically taught that anything sexual is forbidden for you, and when it comes to the act of being assaulted, you start to be you start to feel like if you tell someone, you'll be blamed for it, and you don't want that. That's the last thing you want, because in that time, all you really need is someone to just, tell you everything's gonna be all right, tell you they're there for you. But instead, you feel like they'll tell you the exact opposite, so you don't even feel like you need to seek help. And the other thing is, they've been afraid of how the person will retaliate if they found out that they were out there telling people what happened to them. And it's tragic, because a lot of these guys, or a lot of these people in general, who are out here, committing these acts, they end up, walking or doing it to somebody else in the time that it takes for, the person to build up the courage, and that's not their fault. And that, as stars, through the training we've been undertaking, we're, gonna tell people that it's not their fault. We make sure that the victim knows that they weren't at fault here, that they did nothing wrong, and that's a key thing, because a lot of people believe that it was their fault. They shouldn't have been here at this time. They shouldn't have been wearing this. They shouldn't have drank so much. But it's never the person's fault. It's always the assaulter's fault, not the assaultee. Going back to the question, a lot of these people, just in a basic sense of it, they're afraid. They're afraid of coming to the realization that this happened to them. They're afraid of what happens next. They're afraid of how they're going to live with it. And all of that fear, it bottles up, and it just stops them from talking. It really takes their voice away.
It took me years to even be able to tell parents or anyone or a boyfriend that, first of all, there's a guilt that goes with it, that you don't want to, it's a good kid, right? Other than, especially in situations where it's not like a Lifetime movie where you were just assaulted in a parking lot by a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
If it's someone you're friends with or you kind of have that guilt on you, like, I don't want to ruin this kid's life.
Okay.
Especially if, like, for me and a lot of other women, sometimes you continue the relationship on, and it's an isolated event. And I know when there's no perfect victim, so it's never, you want to be able to tell your story, like, I stopped it right there, I never saw him again, or I was saying no the whole time, and I in my head and in my article, I wrote that I felt like it was my fault because I had sexual conversations with him. I made myself look nice the night we went out. I went back to his apartment. The first thing my dad said years later as a knee-jerk reaction was like, why did you go up to his apartment?
Oh, wow.
Like, he didn't, just like, he was so upset that this happened to me, but he was like, why did you go up even? And
Kind of
like,
making it seem like
yeah.
you were at fault.
and my father's like the father of a super feminist, like intersectional out there, and he knows how I am, and he still said that. So I feel like there's a guilt that you don't want to ruin someone's life in situations where it's
Okay.
date rape or relationship, and you just, I felt like it was completely my fault. And let him. Thank you.
Sorry about that as well.
Thank you.
Ariana, I noticed that you wanted to say something when I said the why victims take so long to come out.
Cameron pretty
Covered
much,
it?
he covered
Okay.
a lot of what I wanted to say, but there's one specific thing where he talked about,
Sure.
like, he said it really quick. He was talking about you don't want to say anything at first because it takes a long time to, like, really realize that this happened to me. Like, it's one thing when it's in your head and you think about it and you stress over it, but once you say it, it becomes real in a sense. Like, it's no longer just like, something that's in your head is pressing on you. You tell somebody else, and maybe sometimes people don't want to burden other people with their issue. And I
That's a great
remember
point.
when the first time I got trained, the lady that came from the Safe Center, she told a story where she felt bad because her friend came to her, and the first thing she did, even though she knew very well not to do it, is she just, on instinct, she was like, well, what were you wearing? What were you doing? What was this?
Interesting.
And even though she knew not to do it, she still will ask these kind of questions because, and I think it has to do with, like, you feel a lot of emotions, especially when it's somebody you might want, the first thing you want to do is, like, find everything out, like when it happened to, like, a friend of mine, and I had no idea until she
Decided to come out with you. Yeah.
And it's kind of a thing where, like, you want to be sensitive, but at the same time you want answers. And so I feel like sometimes a victim might predict that. They
Okay.
might go, I don't want to cause something. I don't want to make it seem like I'm just, crying wolf,
Mhm.
And then unless you, of course, unfortunately, there are some false cases, but I feel like I really just want people to understand that you don't have to feel like that. And it's really hard to do. It's really
Absolutely.
hard to, like, just get it in your head that if I say anything, it's okay, it's not my fault. Because there are people, I remember Erica said made a point before about, like, slut shaming. People are scared of that as well.
Absolutely.
They don't want to go, you shouldn't have done that in the first place. You should have just, like I remember there was an event that we went to, it was called Take Back the Night. It was a huge event a year or two ago at LAU Post, where it basically everybody that attends comes together, and they had people performing. I remember he recited a poem there. Yeah, and there were people that did dance, and there was one lady that spoke about her experience, and she said the same thing happened, like, people were, like, threatening her. It was on her college campus, like, you should have closed your legs or this, that. And I think that's a huge thing. You say it, it becomes real, and then everybody judges you. So I feel like those are two things that people are afraid of when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
I found that on this campus, sorry.
Sure.
When I did the investigative piece, that because the residence is so small compared to other campuses, that one woman told her roommates that she was sexually assaulted after a night of drinking by a friend's boyfriend, and the whole hall turned on her, that you must have just had sex with him and you don't want to admit that this happened to you. And she kind of just shut down and stopped going to her the RA about it. And she kind of and some girls told me, like, yeah, we heard about it, we felt bad, but
We still did it.
we still took the side
Okay.
of, it makes more sense that you just had sex with him.
Now, Erica, she mentioned that you brought up the topic of slut shaming. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on the topic?
It was when we were reading through the questions and we were talking about, like, this in particular. I was saying how some people are afraid because, like, they don't want to be called a slut, or, like, sometimes, like, let's say it could be, like, your first time having sex and that could be your assault, and then you would have that label thrown on you.
Okay.
So people have a fear of that. That's pretty much what I was saying.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up soon, but I just want to close off. If you guys just want to run down as a society, what do you think we should do to improve this? Do you think it requires more conversation? Do you think for you guys, more involvement in activities like this? What are your thoughts?
I think it definitely is having more conversation.
Okay.
Like, that's what we try to do on campus whenever we have, like, our tablings. That's all it really is. It's like we're just giving people the information to have that conversation so you can feel comfortable about it. So that when somebody does come up to you, like, you know how to proceed, you know how to be comforting and being, like, like, asking questions, but asking them in the right way so they're not feeling
Absolutely.
like you're targeting them.
Okay. Ariana, would you like to add on?
Yeah, education has got to be, like, the most important thing, because for me, the way I think about it, you can't have a conversation really about something you don't know about. It can't just pluck something out the sky.
Sure.
You can try, which is how conversations sometimes go a direction they shouldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, because when I joined STAR, it was even before school started, because I was here for, like, a little residential program before school started, my freshman year started. And so I got, like, an idea of it, and we didn't do much until school actually started. And I learned a few things that if I had known, years prior, I would handle the situation, like, so differently. So knowing things, because there's a lot of times that people don't know. Because I think it was you that said something about a Lifetime movie where it's like some stranger. Mm-hmm. People have that narrative in their head, so when something actually happens, they don't think right away, that's what this was.
Right.
If you keep feeding in the wrong information, then it's hard to have that conversation if you don't even know what you're talking about. So
yeah, and you can misinform people by not having that education. That's a great point. Cameron?
Definitely to go off of what Erica and Ariana said, communication, education are definitely key. Communication in the sense that, you should always be having the conversation going, always having the conversation of what's right, what's wrong, what I accept, what I don't accept going. Education in the sense that you should understand these things. Just pick up any resources, billions upon billions of resources on the internet and libraries, magazines, pretty much anywhere that has words where you can just understand what consent is, understand what it means to engage in a sexual act, understand what is rape, understand what is assault. And also try your best to understand the other side. Understand your partner at all times. That should always be a key thing in any relationship, whether it's committed, whether it's casual. You should always be striving to understand the person you're with, because whoever you're with reflects on you, and what you do to them also reflects on you. You should never have to worry about how you're treated or how they're treated. It should always just be a constant. They like this. They're this type of person. They deserve this. I want to do this for them. And then the reverse back to you. I just feel like this whole this whole thing could improve just if we could all agree to just try more. I feel like a lot of people are just going with the flow, just letting things happen, and that's kind of where the problem is. Just try more, better yourself. It starts with you.
Okay, Laura Jalen, your closing thoughts?
I'm piggybacking on top of, other than just being open with your communication, like everyone said, I feel like I'm all about shifting the conversation to teach people not to be accused. That's it. Just how to go about your sexual interactions, avoiding any gray area where you can be like, in the back of your mind, did I overstep? Just knowing that and just starting to shift the blame off of the victim to a person who's the aggressor or would-be aggressor, I feel like we'll be in a...
And from our previous conversations, not in this panel, but you've mentioned that other universities are taking the initiative
University of Kentucky.
to teach how not to be aggressors. And that's a valid point, and maybe that's something that as a panel or as a campus community, we can hopefully have that discussion here. Jalen?
I would love to see more advocacy in our society. I feel like advocacy and education go hand in hand. I feel like we should steer more towards the youth, because unfortunately there's children as small as 4 years old who unfortunately have encountered these sexual assaults and is sexually abused. However, they're children, they don't really know how to react or how to speak upon it. So if we engage with the youth and advocate the youth, educate the youth, they will be more familiarized with what sexual assault is and how to approach the situation. Also, I feel like everybody here on this panel advocates for sexual assault and sexual abuse, and I would just love to see more of us in the society, more people who are passionate for these topics and are willing and want to make a change in the society.
So I just want to correct you on one thing. We advocate for sexual assault.
Awareness.
Awareness. I'm so sorry.
I know what you meant.
Yeah, for awareness of it.
Sorry, my apologies.
You're fine. Erica, Ariana, Laura, Jalen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
At the bottom of this video, we interviewed a couple students on campus, where we were able to get their thoughts, and they also shared their experiences on sexual harassment and sexual assault, so we'll be including that as well. All right, thank you for watching.
Thank you.